Hello, everyone. My name is Dalen Logan. Thank you all for being here today with us. My project is all about Spokane's small trees and their post-planting health needs. Uh, I'm currently a student at Spokane Community College. I'm starting my second year, actually the 17th, for my AAS in Fisheries and Wildlife. Up to now, I've absolutely loved working in natural ecosystem monitoring, looking at how animals and environments interact with each other. I've always been a little bit interested in the restoration work, and I thought a cool mix would be looking at how urban ecology works, the humans with the environment. And this project, this internship was kind of a perfect mix of that. As I went into this project for that, I wanted to look at what happens to the trees after we plant them. Original plan was to survey 100 randomly selected trees with a 1-inch diameter. Uh, these were all going to be in Spokane, and I actually used the City of Spokane's tree inventory, which is available through their ArcGIS portal. But due to some mishaps on my end with the data and some data, I hate this word, irregular issues, I can't speak. I was only able to get 30 of the trees. Uh, Here actually is a screenshot of all the trees the city of Spokane has on their survey, on their, yeah. And unfortunately, that's a lot more trees than I need. So I actually had to go through and cut out all the ones that were in parks, all the ones that were bigger than 1-inch diameter. And in the end, after I randomly had ArcGIS randomly select 100, these were all the trees that I had planned. And as you can see on the left, I had a lot of other options and a lot of other things I looked at, but in the end, I went with this, which afterwards I took into Google My Maps and I planned out a route for each tree uh, so that I could get between them more efficiently. But like I said, I only got about 30 that way. So I looked back, tried to figure out what I could do, and I realized that over the internship, I had surveyed about 471 trees around Spokane, and all of these trees were actually put into iNaturalist. So I downloaded our data set from that, and I took all of our 1 to 4-inch diameter trees, of which I was able to get about 69 trees that already had all the info I needed for the health, for the height, for the diameter, which was really nice. Like I said, using iNaturalist, we got all the fields, the height, health, DBH, proximity to buildings. We mostly use D-tapes, hypsometers, safety vest, and iNaturalist and a compass on my phone. With these pictures, with these tools, I was able to get pictures of each tree, its geolocation, the important information for care, its current state, and all of it was put into a public database for which anyone can download the data, which I love. Of course, I had to adapt my survey approach from the original ArcGIS to what I have now after the difficulties. Before I move into my data, I wanted to bring up some cool statistics that I found. Within the first couple of years of planting a tree, the median annual mortality rate is about 6 to 7% for a young tree. And most of the tree losses can actually come from, like I said, drought or being overshadowed. The annual mortality rates for new street trees can actually be 1 to 68%, which is giant, by the way, which most of you know. And then our smaller trees actually face up to a 4 times higher mortality rate than already established trees on streets. When I looked at all of our trees, uh, I was able to actually separate them by their health identifications. So nearly 60% of our trees were actually thriving, very little dieback, no chlorosis, very few injuries. They're trees that will last like that for a very long time. 32% of them were fair. They're savable with proper care, but they have dieback, they have some injuries, maybe some southwest injury, things that can be managed, but if left, they may become a poor tree, which about 9% of the trees were poor, which is about 6 out of the 69. These trees, oh, sorry, there's very little chance they'll survive even with current maintenance started today, but there's always a chance. Sample collected across Spokane using iNaturalist. When looking at the things that were affecting the trees, about 40% were stress symptoms, so chlorosis, browning, stippling of the needles and stuff, fungal bacteria infections, things that are pretty easy to see, but at that point it's a symptom, not a main concern, but you're able to see it. About 26 was maintenance, so needs trimmed, has a bunch of dieback. It's growing into other objects or into the street, over sidewalks, has a dead top, or has a bunch of basil sprouts. I believe a different intern used a different word, but it means the sprouts that go from the trunk or the stem. Uh, Normally means some kind of stress. But 11% was from environmental damage, which is mainly from machines, soil compaction, people stepping on the roots, all of that. 23% was physical damage from like bark peeling, mechanical damage hitting it, southwest damage, which happened quite a bit, I saw, stake damage, and other kinds of just physical damage to the stem that may be hard. Altogether, it's about 25% that need basic maintenance, which show gaps. I did want to bring this up because sometimes for some people they forget that while on the left you can clearly see maintenance needs in the understory. Another big maintenance issue is, especially with these fruiting trees, they leave a bunch of fruit on the ground, their stem, the seeds, and I almost rolled my ankle stepping on one of them when I didn't see it, and it's kind of important to bring that up too. I wanted to make this graph for everyone to see because these are some of the biggest issues that actually happened or that I saw, but most of them can be fixed with some kind of maintenance, some kind of water, some kind of wrap for the winter, but most of it can be improved if we help it. I didn't want to read through it all, but if you guys want to see it, there's always the uh, recording. I will say the stress issue being 59% really leans towards the fact that these trees need better access to water or better access to nutrients. Here's a good example I found. So on the left, it's what I would consider, as far as I know, almost a perfectly planted tree. It's in a ditch, has a raised container, it has plenty of space, and it's definitely getting watered as the grass is fully green in August. On the right, I believe it was a cherry plum, has a bunch of basil sprouts, it has a bunch of dieback, doesn't really have a good strong top. I think it might have been trimmed at some point that way. But even with, as you can clearly see on that one too, it has plenty of water. It still has a bunch of issues and no one's really getting to it because it's in the middle of suburban hellscape. Uh, Tips for keeping trees alive, 1 to 3 years is the critical period. You want to make sure they get the water. If they're getting stressed, trying to figure out what it is. Winter wrap if they're not protected from by a bigger tree, and you want to create and maintain buffer zones around the trees so they're not getting overshadowed by other things. They require regular maintenance, so the basil sprouts, if they start growing on a younger tree, it can really stress the tree, which is funny because that's a sign of stress. Got to make sure the understory is kept clear, like I said. Too much under there, this tree can't grow, getting all the nutrients taken. And we have to remove any dead or diseased branches before that may spread. With the soil, we want to try and test the soil annually. I know this is a lot for each tree, but maybe neighborhood-wise. Try to improve drainage on certain trees, like how that one was in the bottom of a drain. It probably should be okay. And we should try our best to avoid soil compaction, which the raised containers really helps because no one's stepping on it, nothing's getting in there. But the bottom line I'm trying to say is small investments in care is really big savings and replacement costs because about 41% of our trees actually showed symptoms that proper maintenance could address. This is the biggest thing I wanted to talk about. We invest very heavily in planting new trees, like the Spokane, all the new directives that we have coming out. But we put most of that money directly into planting the new trees, while I feel like we should put 20 to 10% into planned maintenance afterwards. Uh, like I said, we invest heavily in new trees, but shouldn't we protect that investment? If the tree dies before it actually makes a difference that we're trying to find from that small tree, then what was the point in planting it and putting that money in the ground in the first place? One thing that I found when I was looking is early maintenance actually does save a lot of money. Every about dollar saved on maintenance today costs about 147, 169 4 years later. Now this was a 1997 study, but I feel it still works out today. Everything still costs more as the years come on. Pruning early on to form the tree or bush to a certain way costs less than structurally pruning later, say it hits power line, cord line, whatever. We'll mention that one was an Australian study, but once again, I still feel it works for America. 78% of new plantings do actually need corrective work, but the early prevention prevents expensive problems later, like the structural pruning. Time of planting care is about 80% of the lifetime maintenance costs. So once we've moved through that basic beginner stage, we've actually already set up the tree. Deferred maintenance actually creates about 2 times more waste disposal and costs, which especially higher future expenses. Option pruning cycles are about 4 to 5 years for most trees. The longer cycles lead to emergency calls and storm damage, branches dropping because they're too heavy, power outages. We all know the issues. Here's all my references. I think I might have left one out, but I covered most of the bases, and in the VOC one, it's mentioned. I want to thank all of you for being here today and for supporting us throughout this internship. A special thanks to everyone who came to this presentation with us. It made this experience richer and more meaningful. I also want to thank Angelina and Tim for all the hands-on work they gave me along the way, and Joey, Zay, and Zarina for their guidance and encouragement throughout this internship. And finally, to Joey, Karat, Kaya, and Alexia, and Angelina, thank you for sharing this 10-week journey with me. I'm grateful to have learned and grown alongside you all. Post note, and thank you, Matthew Dunford, for telling me about this internship. And the biggest one of all, thank you, USDA, for funding us through the Inflation Reduction Act. Means a lot to be able to get to and do this internship, and it taught me a lot. So I'm really grateful. Thank you, guys.